Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities in Miniature, and today I wanted to take a look at some goodies that just came in the mail, and these are the latest and greatest from none other than Tre Manor and his Redbox games, and these are his Warriors of the Cold North. So what makes these guys impressive and interesting is the fact that prior to this, just about all the models that Tre has done, in fact I think all of them, have been hand sculpted, and he was quite the master of heroically proportioned and well detailed musculature on all sorts of interesting fighting men and monsters of the fantasy realm. So today these guys are actually all 3D sculpted. Now they're not 3D printed, obviously this is metal, good old metal, and I know some people, well, are not the most fondest of metal, but that's okay as well. But these are new models that he put out after trying his hand and actually doing some 3D sculpting. And I gotta say, I'm pretty pleased with the results. This was actually a single piece. This was for the Warband, one of the captains or vice captains, I believe. Now, I went ahead and clipped everything off that was on there in terms of flash. For the most part, there's a few little extra pieces here and there. I did do a nice, horrible job of not keeping the sword straight, but I was impressed. This is actually just a single piece sculpt. Well detailed armor, the fur lining of his jacket, the pieces of, the individual plates of the mail there. A little bit of busy work back there in the inside of his cape and arm, and I don't know how much of that is just flash that's going to need to get cleaned up. I had a heck of a time actually trying to get some of that off of there. So besides our co-captain or vice captain, I had to get the heroic leader of the warband, if we can get him in focus there. Now, one of the nice things about this guy is he did have an alternate head, which was the case for all of the modular parted figures, if that's a word, or I'm just making it up now. Again, nice impressive sculpt. These are like scan lines from the process of turning a 3D print into a metal model. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue because once it's primed and painted, I don't think that's going to really show up. I did do a pretty awful job of getting that axe of his pretty bent up, and I didn't do the best job clipping it. And you'll notice I did a nice job of ruining his foot there as well. Hopefully it won't be as noticeable once he is painted. As I was saying, a couple of the models had various head sculpts. Here is the alternate version of the leader. Quite heroic and stoic. And here is a beardless version of one of the modular minis. Now I had to go with the bearded option. You're going to be digging around in the cold north for treasure and loot. Working for a wizard up there in Frostgrave, you probably want to, keep your body nice and warm. Again, I had a little bit of a trouble getting all of the flash under his arm there cleaned out. I didn't have the best files for the job. And what's interesting is this arm here is actually modular. They had a couple of different weapon options, and I thought this was kind of neat. The hand for the weapon options is actually on a ball socket. You can't really notice it even, so it just kind of pops in there and you can adjust it and play around with it. And finally, since these figures were a little bit, or supposed to be, we'll find out in just a moment, supposed to be a little bit larger scale compared to Tre's older stuff from Redbox, I had to get a new wizard, sorceress, priestess, tribal leader, healer, whatever you want to use her as. I mean, she's got all the right accoutrements to make just about any type of magic-using character in the Cold North, which I think was the idea. She's also a single-cast piece, and she was much better off with the flash than her compatriots there. Now, the big question for me was, how are these figures going to scale? Because Tre's stuff has always been kind of more true scale, the musculature, the litheness of the body was always there, and sometimes they didn't mesh really well with the big, ham-handed, overtly heroic proportions of the typical GW stuff. I did find one of my older figures from a much older Kickstarter. So here's what I'm talking about. And that was always the big criticism of Tre's work. It was never that the quality of the sculpts were bad. I mean, no, far from it. It was always that they were more true scale. And you can see here, there's a pretty substantial difference, the old versus the new. And I mean, obviously, our leader here has his big winged helmet on, but like even grabbing our modular guy, who's kind of hunched, just like our craven little crossbowman here. You can see there's still a little bit of a size difference going on there. Is it substantial? I mean, this guy's probably, you know, weedy and not as well fed as our more hardy adventurer here. But, you know, that's going to be one of the nice things about working on various models from various companies on the tabletop, because you do get an interesting sense of scale when you start mixing and matching other things into the picture. I just had a Frostgrave guy handy. Where did I put him? So, going with a more traditional Frostgrave model here. One of the plastics, you can see there's a bit of a size difference. They were already smaller than Tre's stuff to begin with. Let's use our priestess, since she's actually standing up straight. So you can see here. Size, a little bit of a difference. The new guys, though. Sliding chess pieces around or something. My first thought was like some of the Victrix Vikings. They're not too badly out of scale if you wanted to have these guys as heroes. Any of Tre's stuff I think would make great heroic HQ leader type models. If you wanted to mix them in with like Oathmark or Frostgrave models, it does work, except I would suggest mounting them on a little bit bigger base, because otherwise they're just going to be too short. He's still pretty short in comparison to these new guys too. I think looking at the older ones, I think they could probably get along pretty well in terms of size. Grabbing a WizKids figure. Yes, my Witcher is a little bit hunched over, but I think it's going to be a good fit if you wanted to go mix some of those in with, you know, modern. It's modern. It's not like it's that out of date. More easily accessible, let's say that. One of the new Kamigawa type guys with super floppy weapons, but again, you can see, I think scale-wise, they're going to look really good together. So if you wanted to mix and match with those, that would totally work. I am looking for some Wargames Atlantic stuff, maybe? Mantic guys? Not too badly. I would say you might want to use like more of the Northkin Defenders than the older, or even the more modern Basilians. Oh, the GW Human. Not too bad. Okay, that's good to see. Stormcast are still bigger than them. So even though they're larger, they're not that large yet. And I know Stormcast aren't exactly human. Now here's an interesting idea, especially if you wanted to start mixing and matching with some of Wargames Atlantic's optional stuff out there with both the 3D printed and plastics. This is with one of their Dark Age Irish. You know, that might be something worth exploring too. Size, while there is a little bit of a difference, I think these guys could, you know, be your typical fodder for the Warband, Saga Warbands or something. Again, I think especially the more heroic looking characters would make great leader types for those games where you need somebody a little bit larger than life, right? I don't know why I have a Keltos figure here. That has to be a Kev Adams sculpt. This is like the most slain looking Keltos model I think I own. But anyway, we're getting off track. So, do yourself a favor, I think. Definitely take a look. I know Tre has been looking into doing some like the Siocast stuff possibly, or just continuing off in metal. That's always a option. And, you know, if you're into supporting smaller indie companies and unique and creative artists, I don't think you can really go wrong with checking out Redbox Games stuff. So do take a look. We'll have that link down below, and hopefully you guys are going to enjoy your figures from him as much as I am. So, with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.